How old were you when you were introduced to the world of crime?
7, I think, 7 or 8, and I loved it.
This is the story of how a teenage troublemaker became Britain's greatest fraudster.
Find ways of being able to obtain people's identity.
How much money were you earning?
I think when I was 16, my nan found £500,000 underneath my bed.
Oh my God. Stealing over £30 million over the course of his career.
Just grew and grew and grew into organised crime at a really high level.
Before it all came crashing down.
There's people running, screaming everywhere. And then the next thing I know, I pulled the gun out and then bang.
Thank you so much for speaking with me today, Tony. What's most interesting to me about your story is the fact that you've gone from one extreme to another. In your criminal career, you stole millions and millions of pounds worth of money, goods. You had the unofficial title, Britain's greatest fraudster. And then now you work in fraud prevention, helping to catch criminals like yourself.
And I never really set out to go and, catch other criminals. I was just trying to earn a living, right? Like I knew that I had a skill set that I want to pay back to the victims that I've caused, and then can I use what I've got as a way to make a career, which was something that I never had.
On that note, let's dive in a bit to your childhood. You were exposed to a huge amount from a very young age, from crime to the abuse of other family members.
Yeah. So 2 days old, my mum comes home from the hospital and just basically gives me to my nan. My dad's left. My mum is 17 when she has me, right? But my mum starts to drink, and then obviously that deteriorates down. And so my nan's got to work, my granddad's got to work. When I did go and stay with my mum, I see her get beat to a pulp. And of course, my nan doesn't want me round that. And so arguments ensue about, I can't go here, I can't go there. I'm at home left to fend for myself. And so you just get a low self-worth, and that low self-worth created what I become.
So how old were you when you were first introduced to the world of crime?
I think I was probably about 7 or 8, up the top of the road. Like we used to have this, I used to call them the big boys. They were just a bunch of boisterous boys that would do different types of things. And so there was a pub at the top of where we lived, at the top of the road, and on the roof it had like a hatch, and I was skinny, really skinny, and they just lowered me in through the hatch of the pub so I could just unbolt the door and they could just come in and rob it. I'll get a packet of fags, a packet of crisps and a bottle of Coke, right, for doing it. And I loved it. Like, I just absolutely loved that, because I'm getting admiration from all of these people, these peers that I want, yeah? Like, if you think of what's happened as a child, I want that admiration, and that just set me off. I wanted to feel that again, And so then, how do I upscale that as a criminal? How can I make more money out of it? I'm not making enough. And then they used to have this place called London Arena. They had a great big fairground. But, everyone's putting money in to play the machine. So we just plotted for 6 weeks and just watched, and then we just hit it and robbed it. So, like literally within probably 25 minutes, we got £16,000 as kids, 15-year-old kids, all in pound coins, yeah? Once you have that sort of touch, yeah, where you're like, wow, that was so quick, it's so exhilarating, you got away with it. That was something that led me on.
So let's talk about when you got involved in the credit card fraud and identity theft. How did that come about? So
at 16, I meet a guy, we're buying cards off of him, right? What's called clone credit cards, right? And he would come to us and he'd say, right, if you've got someone that works in a shop, you can go to them and get them to swipe and do cash back, which meant we could go in, swipe, we started at 50 quid, 60 quid, yeah, and get 30 quid back, let them keep 30 quid. And then very quickly, it rose to thousands. As we grew through that process, I was buying quite a few cards off him, and I had loads of people working in different shops, in restaurants, in bars, and I was just kind of building that little network. One of my other mates said to me, maybe we should get our own grabber. Yeah, why don't we ask him if we can get a grabber?
What's a grabber?
So a grabber is like a card reader, and he showed us how to obtain card details. So that kind of spurred us on. We sold those numbers, bought another grabber, doubled the numbers. Yeah, I think we ended up getting like 1,000 numbers from somewhere, and I sold them all back to the original guy, and then it just bolted and just stayed in that for ages.
I can't believe
just
you were
hitting that.
16.
I know.
At that point in your life, obviously you're a teenager, do you feel guilt about the crimes that you're committing, knowing that yourself and your associates took money from individuals?
No, not a bit of it, because I'm locked in selfish Tony at that point.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still quite an idiot. Like, I'm definitely not awake in the world, yeah? And thinking, buying a nice chippy jacket, like looking at myself in the mirror, the latest Nikes. My nan couldn't afford all that stuff, you know. I used to have $1.99 plimsolls and Dura-Tick on the side of them, yeah? But we're doing things that other kids wouldn't do, you know, like we're buying cars and stuff, like plotting them up, and like, I didn't have that. So getting all of that stuff increases your self-esteem, it increases who you think you are. Like, it's a myth, but it creates it in you as a young person to do that. And so I'm not even thinking about any of those people.
How much money were you earning a week?
A lot. I think when I was 16, my nan found £500,000 underneath my bed. Oh, God. No, at 17, I bought my first place.
Why was following a conventional route to making money, a legal route, not an option for you?
So my granddad was a plumber and my uncle was a roofer by trade, right? So I tried both jobs. I liked the idea of it, but the actual practical side of it, I was absolutely useless at, yeah? And I just never had the skills. And like my nan used to always say I was a bit thick. I wanted to be an accountant, which is mad. I didn't know nothing about it, but I just never did it. It's always something I regretted.
Obviously, the work that you're doing carries massive amount of risk. So what do you go to prison for the first time?
The first time I go to prison is in 1999. I go to a club in Southend and we're partying. So I go and bend down to pick the bottle up. And as I come up, well, I'm a little bit drunk, I'm a little bit like that. The doorman just grabbed me out of nowhere. They just literally lifted me up, whacked my head through the door and just threw me out the side of this club. I was so shocked. I'm like, where's my mate? Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you going on about? And he goes, listen, mate, if you don't go away, I'm going to beat you up. And then he slapped me round my face, yeah? And it's the embarrassment of the slap that causes me to then go to the car. And in the car, I've got like a blank fire, a bottle of Cava, and I've got a quarter of cocaine. I just literally, like a quarter of a Z, an ounce, yeah? Literally just put the coke, just done the coke, popped the Cava, down the Cava like that, put the gun in my waist belt and went, right, I'm gonna go and have this idiot. And then walked up the hill. And then as I get really blurry as I'm walking up the hill. And then the next thing I know, I pulled the gun out, let it off. There's people running, screaming everywhere. And then bang, I'm then blacked out. And then wake up the next morning in a police cell in Southend, where the police officer comes around and goes, Carl, I bet you're embarrassed about what happened last night, you and you. And I was like, I don't even know what's happened, mate. And then he showed me on the video what had happened. And I was just like, oh no, that's so embarrassing. I was like, is everyone okay? And he's like, yeah, everyone's fine. He said, but you know, like for this, you go to prison. And then I went to jail deservedly for it. And I learned a lot about myself and violence throughout that sentence, but it didn't rehabilitate me.
How did your life change after you came out of prison?
When I come out of there, I try to get a normal job. I go and work, you know. Like my wife was pregnant. She's just had my first son. I've come out very quickly down the line. You realise that what am I going to gain from what I'm doing here? How far do I go if I work from 7 in the morning till 12 every night? And then I have a conversation with one of my other mates that says, look, maybe we should set up a little team, go out, start hitting a few bits. And that's what we did. Like, very quickly then I find ways of being able to obtain people's identity, right? So they'd started doing this thing called buy now, pay later. Once you've obtained someone's identity, you're able to open up a store card as that person in their name. So you would just go into a store and you fill out a form, and then they give you a nominal amount that you're then allowed to spend in store. So then we'd go into the store and buy goods, and then I'd take the goods to a fence that kind of sits in the middle between the criminal and the person that they're selling goods to. All the people go to him and say, oh, can you get me this? Can you get me that? I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. And then he just feeds the list onto me. And all of a sudden, now I'm making 100 profiles a day with 100 driving licenses, starting to get Rolexes, cars, all different things that start, you just up the ante, and then it all feeds into the criminal network.
Wow. How long were you doing this for?
First spell, probably done it for about 5 years.
Wow.
And then just grew it. It just grew and grew and grew and grows into organised crime at a really high level.
How did that come about?
So that happens because one of the guys that's working for me, he gets an addiction to crack, and he gets a kilo of cocaine. He goes and washes it all up and smokes it in one weekend, right? He's done the whole lot. But he's taken it off a really naughty drug dealer from South London, who, unless he pays that back then it's £70,000, unless he pays that £70,000 on that day, they're going to go and burn his mum and dad's house down. So as he's out working with me, and on the way back, he just tells me in the car, look, I've got this thing that's happening. Do you know anyone that can help me? And so I had one mate that was kind of connected to the higher echelons, and I rung him, and he said, let me make a phone call, I'll ring you back. And then he rings me back and gives me an address to go to and says, they're after this guy, you need to come, bro. So I'd end up going there, like, it's like a bloody Guy Ritchie film, yeah? They're putting plastic up in this room. I'm thinking, oh my God, what is going on, yeah? I walk in there with him. I said, look, I'll get you that money in 3 days. You just got to trust me. Like, here's who I am, here's where I live. 3 days later, I walked back in and gave him it.
Wow.
I actually gave him a little drink on top as well, yeah? I gave him a car. And he was so shocked that I'd given him the car that he was like, I like you. Like, you should stay around, keep my number. If ever you need anything, just ring me. And then that's it. I'm then now involved in organised crime, and very quickly I became his left-hand man.
Did you ever, during this process, understand the weight of what you were getting involved in, and were you scared at any point of getting caught?
Was never aware of the weight of it, definitely. And there's like a thing in the criminal world, you don't talk about the old bill and getting caught. We want it nice and clear, so no one kind of talks about that kind of stuff. Like, for people to commit a crime, you have to be already willing to go so far.
And I read in your story that you went on the run. Was it for 6 years?
Yeah, I spent 6 years on the run.
Why was that? How did that come about?
So one of my mates, we was getting plasma screen TVs, and then he rings me to come and help him because it's quite big, like they're quite in big boxes. So he rings me to come and get him, and as I literally put my hands on the box, police had been watching us all day. They just come out of everywhere, arrested us. But at that point, I've got 3 boys, and my wife was pregnant, and I've got a girl. And once I'd seen the scan, there's no way I was going to go and miss the bonding period with her. So I changed my name. I got all new identity documents, and I just moved. I didn't say nothing to my missus about any of it. She knew about the court case because she knew I'd been nicked, yeah? I actually said to her that it got what's called an NFA, no further action. So she don't know none of that stuff, and I literally just picked up house, and I moved from here to here in a different name. We're still in the same area. I know how they're going to look for me, so I plot it all. Yeah, I didn't say nothing to the kids. And that lasted for, 6 years until I'm kind of running out of money. Like, at that point, I've been on the run for a long time. Like, I've spent shed loads of money. I've been renting properties in different places to find where the police are going in their investigation. And like, I'm doing all mad stuff, really, that don't really make any sense. And I'm smoking shitloads of weed. Like, I'm proper constantly on it all the time. And then I go to a petrol garage in Basildon. As I go in there, I've got like a big bag of like phones that I'm going to cash in with someone else that I'm meeting there. I've gone in, got all the bits and pieces, but as I've walked past these 2 police officers, they're just bogging me. Yeah, and I think because I stunk of weed probably, they just come up to me and say, excuse me, sir, can we just have a word with you for a minute? Can I just take your name? So I give him my fake name that I've been using. And he just says, I believe you've got a warrant out for your arrest, or you've got 2 warrants out for your arrest. I was like, no, not me, mate. He was like, yeah, definitely you. And then that was it.
Did your wife at the time know the extent of your criminal activity?
No, she hasn't got a clue. And I just called her and then started blabbing like a big baby to say, look, this is what's happened. I'm sorry, I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know what to do. I don't know what's going to happen. And she said, okay. And then, of course, I then get remanded and I go to prison. 3 months later, she comes to visit me. So she comes on the visit. Now she walks into the visit hall. She's holding my son's hand. He's just crying his eyes out. Yeah, he's just like, so I'm like, what's the matter with you? Shut him up. I don't want him crying in here. What's up with you? Like, you're embarrassing me. She just shook her head at me and went, are you for real? Like, what's the matter with you? And I was like, what are you talking about? And she went, you're in prison again. That's why he's crying his eyes out. It's your fault. What is wrong with you? And for the first time, I realised all the things I'm doing, I think I'm doing it for them. I'm actually causing them much more problems than what I'm solving. So I kind of was like, right, I've got to change. I have to change my ways. And like, I thought it loads of times, knowing that it's wrong, knowing that I need to come out of it. And I don't want to live a criminal life, but this time was really different.
Yeah. What kind of takes me back about your story is the fact that you literally go to prison and you come out wanting to work in fraud prevention.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there must have been such a huge mental shift that went on in prison. Like, was there a moment that you decided, I actually have the knowledge and the skill set to be able to use this for good rather than stepping back into criminality?
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky because back on the wing, there was he's dead now, God rest his soul, yeah, but there was a guy called Dennis, and I had a conversation with him about it, and he said, you should do it, mate, you should go out. And so I go to the job centre, and I go in and I say, oh yeah, I'd like to work in, I called it loss prevention then. So she said, oh, what experience do you have? Like, I was like, well, I've got quite a lot of experience, but probably not in the way that you think, yeah? And of course, when I tell her, she's like, look, I don't think this is going to work out for you. I think you should go and just go and be a van driver. I think that's probably the best thing that you can do. You've got experience in doing that, so you should go and do that. It's already hard as a criminal. This industry is for trusted individuals. And that just kind of made me think, oh, like, so they're never going to accept me. And very naively, I thought I'll go and do my own thing and I'll build a training course that I can show these people of some of the stuff that perhaps they don't know.
Yeah.
And that just got me loads of traction within the industry that I'm now work within every day of my life.
And in terms of kind of looking back, especially the crimes from when you were younger where you were stealing from people and individuals, how much of the guilt of that motivates what you do now? Because I can imagine there's a big part of you that feels motivated to want to make a difference because of that.
There will definitely be lots of victims that I created, thousands of victims that I created, and I can never ever repay what I did to them. That's why, like, every day I get up in the morning to try and fight back against those sort of things. I try and just help victims of fraud in multiple different ways, whether that means helping the police to understand the types of crimes that are happening to the sorts of victims that I created, or making an awareness campaign to stop younger generations becoming victims of economic crime. But like I said, I can't go back and change anything, and I have to regret it every day until I die, I guess.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with me. It's been really eye-opening to hear how you really have gone from one extreme to another and how you've literally turned your life around completely. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.